Hi, this is Kimberly Miller with the Palm Beach Post. I cover the weather, climate, and the environment for the newspaper, and this is our third broadcast, Facebook Live, during this hurricane season. A lot has changed since we did our last one earlier this month. So welcome to our third broadcast, and please ask questions as we go along. I'll be talking about what's happened with El Nino, which is significant even in just the past week. Give NOAA's update on the hurricane forecast that basically reversed a May prediction for a normal hurricane season, and what's happening today in the tropical Atlantic, including what's on our doorstep right now and is going to affect us this weekend probably. Again, if you're just joining us, we're updating what's going on this hurricane season, and there's actually quite a bit of news. So please ask questions if you have them, and I'll do my best to answer as we go along. I've been covering the hurricane season for the Palm Beach Post for, this will be my fifth season, I think. But I've been covering hurricanes for the paper since 2004 with Charlie. Okay, so let's get started. What happened this week was we were thinking it was going to be a slow season. And I wrote a story on Tuesday saying that we might go through August without any named storms. That proved to be a mistake. Tuesday night at about 11 p.m. we had Tropical Storm Chantal form. And that just goes to show you that things can change quickly this time of year, and you need to be on guard. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to the seasonal forecast. Now, Chantal came and went pretty quickly. It formed far away in the North Atlantic and is expected to spin around on itself after weakening to a depression overnight. Now, what's interesting about Chantal is hours before it was officially declared a tropical storm, it was given just a 10% chance of forming. And so I just want to show you quickly. Here's what Chantal looks like right now. It's actually moving around the top of the Bermuda High and kind of just going to spin around on itself and then fizzle. This is what it looked like at 2 p.m. Just a few hours before it actually became a tropical storm. So it only had a 10% chance of forming, and I think most forecasters had written it off completely considering how far north it was. But if you paid attention to our last Facebook Live, I talked about how the water up there is pretty warm and there wasn't a ton of wind shear, so it just took off. Now this was as good as it looked. The most impressive that it was. This was just quickly, soon after it formed. Again, it's since fizzled. It was never any threat to land. And again, most forecasters had written it off completely, considering how far north it was. It basically formed at the same latitude as Long Island and just south of Nova Scotia. Colorado State University hurricane expert Phil Klotzbach said that this is the highest latitude named storm formation for any tropical cyclone since Alberto in 1988. So if you are into stats, baseball fan maybe, there's one for you. All right, so this is Chantal, and that brings us to the concern that is on our doorstep and that could affect us this weekend. Let me find it here. Okay, that's this little guy. He popped up yesterday morning, and they just did an update. It's up to a 30% chance of development over the next 5 days. And what I wanted to explain too is that the yellow hatched area here is not its path, but more where it's predicted to form, like where it could form up. So again, that's up to a 30% chance of formation. And one thing that I just learned and talked to a forecaster about is that something's happening this week. I'm going to go to that. This is a low pressure frontal boundary that's going to show up on Sunday and stall just on the border here. And so some hurricane forecasters at AccuWeather are thinking that this little system that would be named Dorian is going to hit that frontal boundary and spin up, and that might be where it becomes a tropical cyclone or a tropical storm. All right, so as an aside, and now I've lost my place. But again, if you're just joining us, I'm Kim Miller with the Palm Beach Post, and we are going over the hurricane season and what's happened so far and what's happening now. So again, on Wednesday morning, this disturbance showed up. It has a 30% chance of development over 5 days. And I know you've heard this before, but no matter what, it's going to possibly affect us no matter what, possibly that doesn't make a lot of sense. But no matter what, we could see some rain this weekend from it. And they are forecasting actually up to 2 inches possibly over a 3-day period. So here's a graphic that shows you 1 to 3 days. So this is through Saturday, I believe. So up to 2.5 inches possibly. And here's a look at it on the GOES East satellite. You can see the disturbance up here near Florida. And then you can also see some Saharan dust here coming off of Africa. The National Weather Service again is saying that we're going to see some impacts and possibly not as much flooding as we were seeing before, but there could be a little bit because it's not as saturated as we were. We had that 2-week period where the ground was really saturated. So with the possibility of a homegrown storm, it's good to catch up on information that you'll be seeing coming out of the National Hurricane Center. We put together this video about some of the new graphics that were introduced the past couple of years that you might want to brush up on just before a storm threatens. There are 4 new graphics being introduced for the hurricane season. One of the biggest additions are tracking maps for storms that haven't even formed yet. The new potential tropical cyclone forecast maps are going to look very similar to what you already see during a hurricane or tropical storm. So you're going to want to look closely at the title, and you'll also be able to tell because the cone of uncertainty is going to be much larger. And that's because it's harder to forecast a system that hasn't quite turned into a tropical storm yet. The new wind arrival graphics answer one of the most asked questions when a storm approaches. When are tropical storm force winds going to reach you? The graphics are in color, and they show you the percentage chances of the winds hitting you at a specific time. Now this is to help you know when you need to have your preparations finished. The storm tracking map has also been changed. There are new colors, it's sharper, but the biggest change and the most important change is a shaded orange area that shows the extent of the damaging winds, because the damaging winds can happen outside the cone. More people die from drowning during a hurricane or tropical storm than from wind. So the new storm surge watch and warning maps are particularly important to warn you about dangerous flooding. The warning is 48 hours advance notice. The watch is 36 hours to potential flooding in your area. They want you to be better prepared and know more about what might be coming. Miller with the Palm Beach Post, and we're going over what's going on in the tropics during peak season, which really began this week and runs through mid-October. Now we do have a question from Kathleen who's asking, why is there so much crime in Palm Beach County, and why is it so trashy? I'm sorry, Kathleen, this is probably not the Facebook Live to answer that question. Maybe we'll have one of our crime reporters on at another time. But one of the key things that has happened this week is that there's been a significant change in NOAA's forecast for the rest of the season. In May, NOAA was predicting a near normal hurricane season with the expectation that El Nino would last into fall. They were actually giving it a 60% chance that it would last into fall. Well, El Nino is kaput. NOAA called it dead last week, and that means the forecast has changed to an increased chance of above normal activity for the remainder of the hurricane season. A normal year has 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Now that's 12 named storms including 6 hurricanes and 3 major hurricanes. So now NOAA is calling for a 45% chance of an above normal season, and they have a graphic out with that. They're looking at 10 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 hurricanes, and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. And you know, between 45% above normal and 35% near normal, that's quite a significant change from what they were saying earlier in the year. And that was really based on primarily Jerry Bell, who's the lead forecaster for the Climate Prediction Center, said no models were showing that El Nino was going to call it quits this early in the season. It was really a surprise to everyone. Now, depending on how much shear is left over, kind of like a hangover, like an El Nino hangover, we could see, you know, fewer storms in the next week or so, but he is predicting, and he was pretty clear that this was going to be a busier than normal season. And this is the time of year when the strongest hurricanes form off the coast of Africa. They call them the Cabo Verde storms. I'm trying to get my map up here. Africa. Nope, Chantal. Well, where's my goes east? Okay, well, this will suffice. So that call it Cabo. You might hear Cape Verde storms also, but the name changed a couple years ago, and now it's Cabo Verde. And those are the waves that come off of Africa, the tropical waves, and they travel through the Atlantic, make it into the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. And those are the big storms like Irma, and Michael, big Cat 4 or 5 storms. Sometimes they travel around the Bermuda High, so that's a big predictor of where they're going to go. If the Bermuda High skirts them into the Gulf of Mexico or up the East Coast. NOAA doesn't predict landfall, so we just have to wait and see. So again, we're wrapping up our Facebook Live update for the 2019 hurricane season. So please ask any questions if you have them. I think the key thing here is that NOAA has increased its forecast. They're predicting an above normal season now, which is totally different than what they said in May. Colorado State University is still going with an average season, but they also said on Monday that there were going to be no named storms this week, and basically said nothing was going to form in the month of August, which I wrote a whole story saying that nothing was going to form in the month of August, and then Chantal formed. So there you go, Mother Nature. She likes to surprise us. With the death of El Nino, I did want to show this award-winning video we did that the Palm Beach Post put together in 2015 when the so-called Godzilla El Nino died. Godzilla El Nino was one of the strongest on record, and we just felt it was fitting to give it a good memorial. The mighty El Nino of 2015-2016, a climate pattern so powerful that it protected Florida from hurricanes for a remarkable 10th year in a row, has died. El Nino was nicknamed Godzilla for the power it had to cut down storms in the Atlantic before they could reach the coast. For all its good, though, El Nino was a kaiju. Its torrential rains flooded Florida in January and sent tornadoes through the state. While the earth is mourning, La Nina is waking up, and that means more hurricanes for Florida. So rest in peace, El Nino, but we'll see you again when the Pacific Ocean warms and the atmosphere ushers you back to life.
Change, or is there something going on with the sun?
We're here.
Mike.
Oh, okay, so we have a question.
Mike asks, do you blame climate change, or is there something going on with the sun?
Okay, Mike is asking, do I blame climate change or is there something going on with the sun? I don't know that we can blame climate change for the busy season we've had recently. We are in the beginning in 1995, we entered the warm phase of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, which is a busier time for hurricanes. Now, I know we had a 10-year drought where we had nothing, but like I said, Jerry Bell, who is the lead forecaster for the Climate Prediction Center, is saying that we can't necessarily just in the past few years blame climate change for the strong storms we had. It's probably more a function of the AMO or the MJO, which is, I can't remember what it is right now. Meteorologists like to use a lot of acronyms. But there are studies that say climate change is going to possibly impact storms. We know that warmer water feeds storms. So could they be bigger? Possibly. And also there have been some studies that said, could they slow down the storms, which means more flooding inland? And we have seen that with Harvey and with Florence, torrential rains and flooding. And one of the things the Hurricane Center is most concerned about right now is getting that point across that, okay, they think they've got the wind. People are scared of the wind. Storm surge, they think they've got that figured out. You know, people are scared of storm surge, or should be, but not necessarily flooding. And with Florence, they had flooding 100 miles inland. And you know, several people died, most of them in cars driving into swollen rivers or creeks. So that is the next thing that the Hurricane Center is focusing on. Again, climate change is something we still are trying to understand how it will impact hurricanes, but a warmer globe means warmer waters, and warmer waters feed the hurricanes. I don't know about the sun. I don't know if something's going on with the sun, but Maybe I'll check on the astronomy thing. Okay, so no more questions at this point. Again, we wanted to thank you for joining us for this Facebook Live. It's an update on the hurricane season. You can always contact me directly at kmiller@pbpost.com. And please follow my Twitter account at kmillerweather. I also have an Instagram at kmillerweather. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your readership and for following us.